This is April O'Neil with a Channel 6 News exclusive. There are new reports of mysterious mutant Ninja Turtle sightings. Some sources describe the latest turtle as wearing a black mask, always seen alone. A Ronin, as some folks have described him. Still, other witnesses have expressed to this reporter their confusion toward if in fact there is an isolated sighting, or perhaps there's merit to additional rumors of a cybernetic mutant space bunny also lurking somewhere out there in the shadows. This reporter wants to know if these new anomalies are actually somewhere out there. What other mysterious creatures might be simply biding their time to make their appearance known as well? Mutant turtles? Now I've heard everything. What's next? A samurai panda? Cowboy bovines? Oh, or a law enforcement moose? Now we go to SpeekyGeeky for more details. This has been April O'Neil, Channel 6 News, signing off.
TMNT, top 60 NECA Fred Wolf style TMNT what if figures we need immediately. Part 2, we're looking for a few good never before made in the original animation style mutants. Hi everyone, and welcome to SpeekyGeeky. As always, I am Mr. Geeky. As frequent viewers might recall, since we put our last episode out right before Comic-Con, yup, it's been that long. We thought that might buy us a little bit of time to sit back and relax a bit before the next round of reveals and the time between getting another of these episodes out to folks. But once the convention hit, we realized, yeah, that rest was a big no-can-do. Between San Diego Comic-Con, New York Comic-Con, our own recent interview with NECA's TMNT brand manager Trevor Zammit,
and then the new figures dropping at Holothon.
Not only did we have a barrage of new reveals from IDW, Mirage, Fred Wolf, Movie, and Archie, but we also got a sneak peek look at something else NECA has up their sleeve in the form of something obviously near and dear to our hearts at SpeekyGeeky, as we've been advocating for exactly something like this from this series you are watching right now in the form of Last Ronin done in Fred Wolf style. But Mr. Geeky, you might ask, couldn't this just be a one-off to build on the excitement and love from that recent series? Well, sure, it could have been, if not for the second and third revealed what-if figures that made their grand appearance only one convention later at New York Comic-Con with Space Adventures Usagi and Space Adventures Donatello. So whatever concern we had about it just being a one-off, yeah, we're now going to go ahead and place this firmly in the category of Toy Dam now burst wide open. And we are over the moon imagining the possibilities that now could be on the table in Fred Wolf style toy form for the very first time. Now, could we be perhaps a bit biased on this issue because this imagined line happens to be 100% aligned with what we've been hoping for all along in this very series by way of looking at and thinking about expanding the awesomeness that is Fred Wolf TMNT? Certainly, but if indeed we were right on the money with this, it might also mean folks who are fans of a variety of additional iterations we haven't yet seen, like Next Mutation, 2003, 2007, 2012, and Rise of TMNT for starters, may just want to start putting a little bit of extra scratch to the side, because we have a feeling some of those characters could be making an appearance within this what-if style Fred Wolf line as well. Who might we see out of this incarnation? Well, that's the beauty, because it could be virtually anybody we just noted. It could also go well beyond who we might have ever dreamed possible, including wholly new concepts in the vein of the Universal Monsters TMNT line, but done in Fred Wolf style, as we kind of sort of saw with Space Adventure Donatello. Those who have been following our Instagram, Facebook, Reddit, or heck, even our YouTube community section probably already know we have been running polls for quite some time toward exactly this possibility. But if you haven't already, make sure to head on over to any of those socials and add your voice to let us know who tops your list for characters you are hoping to see NECA tackle in this style. Go ahead. We'll wait. And by wait, we mean you should probably just hit the pause button and come back, and this episode will pick right back up where you left off. Because this episode is making an attempt to imagine what these characters might look like in Fred Wolf form, you'll also notice we are doing something a bit different with this series. And for some options, we've also set aside some time to imagine what that character's story might have looked like
had they been in the campy world of Fred Wolf animation as well.
These are purely out of our own brain canon here, but if folks watching like where we're going with it, make sure to voice it in the comments and share the video around far and wide, as we may have more we could show you down the road on each and every one of these options if we can demonstrate that the support is there. Okay, with that very long-winded intro out of the way, let's very quickly move over to discuss some of the NECA Fred Wolf TMNT reveals we've seen this year in a section we like to call SpeekyGeeky's Nerd Out Moments. First up, for those keeping tally, we're pretty happy to report that between San Diego Comic-Con and New York Comic-Con, we fared relatively well with who we guessed might be coming our way from the last episode. The link conveniently plopped right here for easy referencing. Sure, there were a handful of others we noted we thought might be coming out, who we haven't seen revealed yet, like Tempestra and Business Suit Casey, for instance. But to be fair,
we did say these guesses were for who we thought were coming by this time next year.
So let's put a pin in those yet to be revealed guesses until we see what's in store for the next couple months. We can start with the option we kinda sorta cheated with, but that doesn't make him any less rad. That's right, we're talking Rex 1. You might recall that Rex 1 was officially revealed right here on this very channel in the interview that we had with Trevor Zammit right before this most recent one. Even though we got to put peepers on TMNT's very own version of RoboCop from across a computer screen, nothing could have prepared us for how enormous and stunning the figure would be up close at the convention. Trevor did not exaggerate when he said this figure was huge. If we're comparing him to other oversized figures, we'd say he probably falls in right between Android Cryin and Chrome Dome level. Not quite Chrome Dome height, but big enough where he could, and who are we kidding, 100% will stage a pretty epic battle between these two titans. At New York Comic-Con, we were treated to one additional tease on the Rex 1 front, in the form of being able to lay eyes on the gorgeous Daniel Elson Rex 1 box art, donning the title From the Files of Pizza Squad. We also saw the reveal of a major fan favorite, an option we guessed might be coming last episode. And let's face it, one we've been making the case for ever since episode 1 of this very series, in Bugman, Rick Bradley. To start, let's immediately say what needs to be said, and that this figure was gorgeous. Not only did he look like he jumped, or should we say flew, right off of the screen, but this is also a figure we've been waiting over 30 years to see in official plastic. Well, it's true, Duff Foot Toys has made a pretty stellar Playmates-esque custom version as well. This is the very first time done in this very specific Fred Wolf style, and it made our mouth water. In that interview with Trevor Zammit we mentioned just a moment ago, we learned that Bugman will come in only bug form right now. But Trevor didn't take the possibility of seeing his human Brick Bradley form off the table down the road. We also learned that this character will be released as a 2-pack, though it still remains to be seen which member of his Rogues Gallery will accompany him, as there are 3 known villains from the series that could fit that profile in the Swatter, Electro Zapper, and Dr. Dome. It is also quite possible that NECA might be waiting to release his human form with perhaps another of his rogues once enough demand for the original can be demonstrated, or potentially even as part of another accessory pack. For more on Bugman, make sure to check out episode 1 of our Which Figures Do We Want series, the link for which will conveniently plop right here. No announcement on release date just yet. Next up was Lotus Blossom and Chakahachi. Now, if you recall, Lotus Blossom was one firmly on our radar as a figure we thought might be coming before the year was through. In fact, we just so happened to do a deep dive on her, which we'll link to at the end of this episode. But Chakahachi, that character's inclusion very much came as a curveball in the best way possible. Whether we'll be able to see a sized up Chakahachi like we did in the series, or a pizza delivery person disguised Lotus Blossom, is yet to be seen, though early reports do show that she comes with an additional masked ninja head, so army builders take note. But if we've learned anything over the years with NECA, it's important to dream big, because someday you might just find that you aren't just getting the Lotus you were hoping for. No siree, you're also getting freaking mythos building Chakahachi. So that means even characters like the Kojima brothers, or heck, even Rupert from the Planet of the Turtleoids could make it onto our shelves someday soon. Speaking of line expansion, next up is Space Usagi. First of all, our immediate reaction to discovering this character was coming was, "What?" Followed by an hour of unadulterated and unintelligible stammering while being completely awestruck. But once we got our bearings and processed what we were looking at, and so soon after the first magnificent Usagi Usagi Yojimbo from NECA, mind you, we were able to unpack this a bit further toward what this figure reveal actually means, and it's safe to say the implications for what might now be possible make us positively giddy with excitement. Similar to the Fred Wolf Last Ronin figure, this version of Space Usagi is unique to itself. True, it appears to look strikingly similar to the Space Usagi from the series Bible of the never-produced Space Usagi animated series, but for all intents and purposes, this is a creation wholly original to NECA, presumably with final design approval by Stan Sakai. Some folks might look at this and say, well, this is just NECA not being able to do the design off of the original Playmates toy Space Usagi figure. But it might not be as simple as that. The brilliance of this design is that if indeed it is based in part off of the unproduced animated Bible appearance, this might also mean NECA has access to that full library of characters. And holy moly, for those who have never seen the series pilot, there were some incredibly fun options out of that property, ones that 100% would pair nicely with the Fred Wolf characters, considering the original pilot itself was in fact also produced by none other than Fred Wolf Productions. Going down this rabbit hole a bit further, it might also track that NECA might pursue other never-produced properties that are still somewhat connected to the TMNT mythos. Images of the never-produced Mighty Mutanimals animated series, The Selected, and Cowboys of Moo Mesa are racing delightfully through our head. Granted, this could just be our imagination running wild here, but the potential doors this figure appears to have blasted wide open have us, dare we say, Twitter-pated. Okay, so here's the deal. While we absolutely want to dive deep into each and every one of those Fred Wolf characters that were revealed from San Diego Comic-Con to now, we also know that you at home are busy geeks and have plenty of other amazingly dorky places you would like to be sharing your time with. So for brevity's sake, we'll just show you the rest of the reveals along with their respective names and a couple word reactions to each, saving the more detailed geek out for some upcoming Turtle Talks, because in the Fun Turtles news department, we have one additional quick announcement. SpeekyGeeky's Mr. Geeky, hey, that's me, is now officially the co-host of Dave Wonder and Dan's monthly Turtle Talk podcast series. So, if you happen to like hearing me geek out about turtles in great detail here, there is a really good chance you'll like hearing me do so over there as well. So if you haven't already, make sure to like and subscribe to Dave's channel right in the corner here, boop, 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 and in this video's description. Not only is there more of me over there, but the rest of the channel is a shell of a good time as well. Oh, since we seem to be in shilling our content mode now anyhow, you might want to check out our latest video series with NECA's TMNT brand manager Trevor Zammit as well, especially if you'd like to hear quite a bit more discussion on Bebop and Rocksteady's gang, Last Ronin, and a whole lot of additional teases we don't want to ruin the surprise for. But yeah, we cover a lot of ground, including beneath the ground and firmly into the lair. And now, with those unexpected shameless plugs out of the way, here is everyone else we saw on the Fred Wolf front from the cons. Mr. Geeky's Quick Take, Mighty Hog and Rhino Man, Dirk Savage and Mona Lisa, Turtle Tots, Big Mac, and the rest of the accessory pack. NECA's What If, Fred Wolf Last Ronin, all of Bebop and Rocksteady's gang, Colossus the Swamp Napoleon. An item that was also finally confirmed was Donnie's portable portal generator. We had originally seen this item revealed all the way back alongside Usagi Yojimbo's promotional photos, so quite a few astute folks assumed this item might have been packed in with our favorite anthropomorphic rabbit. While that inevitably wasn't the case, when you consider where else this device was featured in the cartoon series, we have a feeling it may now heighten the chances for seeing yet another fan favorite hair or even a distinctive dimensional imp introduced within the line, just as quickly as you can say antique porcelain from Dimension Z backwards. One last official reveal shown at San Diego Comic-Con was the Sewer Lair playset. As we noted in the last episode, the Sewer Lair was teased fairly heavily in both the Usagi Yojimbo promotional pics and also the most recent Permutation 4-pack con exclusive. We may have hinted at the confirmation of this diorama in episode 2 of our exclusive interview with Trevor Zammit, so while it was expected, it didn't mean it could prepare us for how neatly and efficiently it fit beneath the previous city street diorama, nor just how vast this lair would be. In all, we were treated to 3 interconnected rooms very much designed with the purpose of expansive character displays. And with the open connector tubes on both ends of the diorama, it also allows for some optimal professional toy photography opportunities as well. One, well, we hate to say final reveal because NECA has a habit of releasing new teases before we can finish putting these videos together just to keep us on our toes. So let's just say more recent reveal was the black and white Usagi Yojimbo variant from Stan Sakai. This beauty snuck in completely unannounced but still managed to sell out within minutes. And yowza, we didn't think it was possible for our favorite bunny to look even more like he just jumped out of the comic pages, but well, NECA certainly managed. And then, just as we think we're in the clear, boom! NECA hits us with a brand new tease of a character we had actually slotted in for our next episode of this series, and that immediately had our teenage self squealing with delight because it was one of those deep-cut characters we had always dreamed of having, but never thought it would be a reality. That's right, we're talking about the Archie 5th turtle, the one and only white bandana turtle mutation April O'Neil. Even though we've only seen a small tease of the character, it had our heads spinning like there was no energy rejuvenating pizza in sight. And because we just can't turn off our geeky hopes, our minds immediately went to wondering what our chances are now of also getting her accomplice, the mutant flying squirrel, Perry Gray. We figured since NECA potentially just opened the floodgates for any and all iterations to appear within the Fred Wolf series, we would take the opportunity this episode to primarily focus on characters who have never been shown in the Fred Wolf cartoon, who might be incredibly cool to get as potential figures within that seemingly now expanded framework. We figured this was especially apt now, since we have begun seeing that characters like Space Usagi and Fred Wolf Last Ronin are not only possible, but are already happening. So, expect to see the same deep dive action you've come to know and, well, love is a strong word. I don't know, tolerate maybe? But we'll expand our focus here to include options out of Archie, the video games, Mirage, IDW, and other iterations, as if we could now include them within the Fred Wolf toy world. Before we jump mutant shelf first into the deep divey goodness, if you haven't already, please make sure to throw some turtle love toward those like and sub buttons. Pass along this video to others who you know will appreciate it like it's piping hot peanut butter and marshmallow pizza. Your views and support mean a great deal to us and allow us to bring you more content just like the one you're watching right this very minute. Yes, you! Okie dokie. With that long-winded but very necessary intro out of the way, in no particular order, and without further ado, let's jump into technically
Part 2 of the top 60 NECA classic cartoon figures we hope to see someday in Fred Wolf style,
or to stick with a title that keeps things slightly less confusing and doesn't take a whole paragraph to say out loud, why don't we just go ahead and call this episode 8 of our Which NECA Fred Wolf TMNT action figures we'd like to see series. Number 6, Monty Moose. First up, hailing from the how was this character not actually in the Fred Wolf cartoon category, Monty Moose very much always seemed a natural fit to get the animated series treatment. As many folks might already be acutely aware, we did have a Monty Moose as an awesomely designed figure from Playmates in the original toy line, based off of Ryan Brown's designs. While many of Ryan's other characters did in fact end up making it into the animated show in the form of Mondo Gecko, Leatherhead, Wingnut, and Screwloose, despite looking drastically different from their toy designs, and Scumbug, who, well, you know what? Scumbug actually kept remarkably close to his toy design roots. Yeah, we know. Technically, Ray Fillet kinda sorta counts too, but here's the deal with Ray. While Ryan absolutely designed the Manta Ray Mutanimal we know and love, as we mentioned in previous episodes, the Ray that appeared in the animated series itself ended up being a very different character. We note this only because it illustrates that Monty could very likely have been yet another one of those Ryan Brown designs that was being considered for the cartoon, and based on his toy design appearance, it also stands to reason that he might have actually made it into the show, just with a different name and appearance. You see where we're going with this, right? If you think back really hard to characters who fit his outfit aesthetic, is there any character that immediately comes to mind? Show of hands? Anyone? Savage? For folks who have seen some of our other deep dives or interviews where we've shown some of Monty's earliest toy concept designs, you likely already know the character we are hinting at here is none other than the nefarious mutant hunter Dirk Savage. If you haven't seen the actual TMNT episode Dirk Savage Mutant Hunter, you might want to pause right here and check it out, as it was an incredibly fun story jammed to the brim full of mutants like the Punk Frogs, Toka and Razar, Mondo Gecko, and even a few others that we have never seen in toy form yet, including the other primary villain of that episode, AJ Howard. For our deep dive on that character, make sure to click the handy link we'll plop for you right here. While Monty Moose inevitably was presented in toy form as a heroic ally to the Turtles, there were still quite a few tells on the box that this might not have always been the case. The most obvious was with the incongruent messaging within the bio description and what his catchphrase was on the front of the packaging. The description goes out of its way to note that he was a moose that mutated, which cool. It also talks about how he is going with his skin-in saber and handy handcuffs to take the charge right into the Foot Clan, who, and this is a point worth reiterating, in both toy form and the cartoon, are robots. So what is the likelihood he is going to skin or handcuff the same robots that the Turtles have zero compunctions about eviscerating into wired pulp on the regular? The front of the package, however, has him spouting a very different tune, one which sounded an awful lot like the mantra of the mutant hunting mercenary Dirk Savage, with the phrase, "I always get my mutant." Now, this is the moment where many folks might point out that, whoa there, geeky, these descriptions were read largely by children and not meant to be scrutinized by a grown adult. Why are you taking this so seriously? And here is why. While these descriptions might seem trivial and only meant to give children a jumping on point for imaginative play, these could nonetheless still be very telling toward what the original intent was for characters that appeared elsewhere, especially when we consider how closely tied the toys were toward being a funnel to the cartoon and vice versa. Early designs show us that sometimes characters were designed as one thing, but by the time the cartoon aired, the character might have been cut, or like in the case of Ray, Wingnut, Screwloose, or Mondo Gecko, have a completely different in-world story from how the toy originated. So we're going to go ahead and take the advice from the Sherlock Holmes Turtles episode and keep following the clues here. And the clues lead us to believe that if more episodes with Dirk made it into the series, perhaps a Mutant Moose appearance might have been his final incarnation. The big question in our mind here is who would have been introduced to fit the role of his sidekick, Bob the Beaver. We see a possible outlet for Bob within the setting as having been a mutated human accomplice of Dirk's, which would make him similar in size to Fred Wolf Screwloose versus the toy counterpart. To add an extra layer of organically within canon value, it might be fun to play with the idea of Bob being another beaver that we've previously seen in concept form. Perhaps yet another Ryan Brown created character like Lumberjack, the burly lumberjack themed beaver. If we were ever to be treated to a Monty Moose figure in Fred Wolf style, we see him being a bit taller and bulkier than he would have been in toy form before. And since in this incarnation he would be a mutated version of Dirk, we might see some weapons that would resemble what we saw in the series connected to that character, but perhaps slightly more moosified. Number 5. Sally Pride. Sally Pride figure. Let's go! Holy unofficial Thundercats crossover, Batman. Well, it was never actually been called out as such within the IDW series where Sally Pride premiered. We're going to be the first ones to say Sally is the embodiment of what we would expect if the Turtles were to ever link up with a series that features our favorite anthropomorphic felines. Well, aside from Swamp Cats, Masters of the Universe, Felix, Cadillac Cats, or Eek the Cat, that is. Why did we say Cadillac Cats and not Heathcliff, you ask? Well, maybe it's because we firmly believe that no one should terrorize the neighborhood. Sorry, couldn't resist. Sally is one of the newly introduced members of the IDW Mighty Mutanimals offshoot team that was once led by another character on this list, Old Hob. More on him shortly. Though much of Sally's backstory isn't yet known, the fact that she is a studded leather-jacketed lioness mutant is more than enough grace to hold that intrigue for a bit. But let's derail our reasoning for a Sally figure for just a moment and very quickly go back to the notion of a Thundercats TMNT mashup series to ask, why the shell not? Real talk here. We've seen the Turtles crossover with various characters and franchises throughout the years, including Batman, Power Rangers, Savage Dragon, Usagi Yojimbo, Fugitoid, Panda Khan, Flaming Carrot and the Mystery Men, Ghostbusters, as well as in toys with Star Trek, Universal Monsters, Almost Star Wars, and Almost Transformers, as well as informally with Toxic Avenger in Muckman, RoboCop with Rex 1, Dirty Harry, or Nick Fury, depending on who you talk to, with Dirk Savage, and basically the Masters of the Universe with Warriors of the Forgotten Sewer. Heck, the comic itself is literally a crossover parody of Daredevil and Ronin, so a Thundercats crossover doesn't seem super de-duper outside the franchise's wheelhouse. But yet, despite both series being incredibly successful in the 80s, then again in the 2000s, that particular crossover just never seemed to come together despite having so much in common that it feels a bit like a no-brainer. Is it possible we have Thundercats on our brain because of our latest Sight Beyond Sight Thundercats Deep Dive series? Oh, 100% that's a given. Does that make us wrong about this observation? We like to think it doesn't take a long stare through the Sword of Omens to see the potential of this idea. Let's interrupt our normally scheduled programming for a moment to entertain some SpeekyGeeky fanfic as we walk through a possible crossover in a section we like to call SpeekyGeeky's Let's Imagine It. Let's pretend for a moment a scenario where Sally is injured and upon analyzing her blood, Donatello discovers, what's this? Sally might not actually be a mutant like everyone had believed. That's right. Under further study, Her DNA suggests that she derived from another planet entirely, but there is also a temporal abnormality detected within her unique genetic code that indicates she actually became time displaced, fleeing the impact from the destruction of her planet, Thundera, in the far-flung future. This bit becomes clear throughout the course of the story. Donnie can deduce a lot, but that probably even goes beyond his level of Deus Ex Machina, even if this were based on the Fred Wolf series. The planet she came from, unfortunately, no longer exists, or rather, doesn't exist yet. But thanks to the turtle's Time Lord friend Renette, she is able to discover that her relatives did in fact make it to Earth many centuries later. And will you look at that, she just so happens to have a gateway which conveniently allows Sally a handy tool to meet her long-lost pride. Clearly we have this whole thing scripted out, and this isn't as off the cuff as we would have folks believe. But suffice it to say, our what-if tale would include a requisite Mumra in a choice disguise or two, most likely at least one that resembles a clone turtle in flowing mummy wrap, an epic fight sequence between the Turtles, Mutanimals, and the Thundercats that obviously would result in their linking of resources and realizing there was no reason to fight other than that it looked oh so cool to everyone reading at home. April, being enlisted into Willow's Warriors, will donned in an outfit that looks suspiciously similar to her Cave Woman April outfit from the old Playmates toys, Casey getting the bulked up Snarfro treatment amidst the Black Pyramid, Splinter versus Rotaro, and Slide trying to pull off one of the worst Turtles disguises since the Crooked Turtle Gang. Again, this is a TMNT deep dive, and not a which crossovers do we want most deep dive. But now that we say that out loud, it does sound tempting to write that as well. So we don't need to spell this all out here, but if what we are suggesting is resonating with folks, and it was something you'd like to see on the channel in greater detail, let us know in the comments, and maybe we can work our magic so that something along the lines of what we are thinking can see the light of day somewhere down the road. Okay. With that crossover fever dream now abruptly out of the way, let's jump back into why we think Sally would make such an awesome figure choice. We already mentioned what a fantastic aesthetic she has, but that isn't even really the half of it. The fact that we're talking the Fred Wolf line here means that we can take that punk style and have her fitting in seamlessly on our shelf next to Mutanimal friend or Foot Clan foe alike. We could see Sally coming with a broadsword, a pistol, opposable tail, and open gripping and closed studded gloved hands. Thundercats emblem to be determined. Number 4, Chien Khan. Well, we are very quickly realizing this episode seems to be raining mutant cats and dogs, and Yoshi Chen, that is to say, Chien Khan, is one dog you wouldn't want to be caught out in the rain with. Before we leap forward with Khan, we want to provide a brief 30-year-old spoiler here, because it's hard to discuss this character without addressing the big mutant dog in the room. So, you know, fair warning. Jumping from the pages of Archie's TMNT adventures, we were first introduced to Chien Khan in his elaborate samurai mask and armor disguise. In fact, up until they let the dog out of the bag a few issues later, Khan just seemed like a badass villain very similar to Shredder. If this seems an unfair comparison, see if this sounds familiar. He controlled a fleet of ninjas, sought to control a vessel much larger than himself in order to dominate the world, had mutant underlings, and hid behind an ornate mask. Admit it, without context, it sure does sound like another mainstay villain, no? Really the biggest difference between Khan and Shredder was that we were able to see for a brief moment, in the form of Ninjara, the mutant fox, what it could have looked like if Shredder had capable underlings to enact his plans for world domination. Which, obviously, he would have gotten away with it all too, if it wasn't for those meddling turtles. As most folks who have read the Archie series might already well know, a big difference between the comic series and the cartoon series that aired along the same timeline was an expansion of the Turtles Rogues Gallery and a movement away from the mainstay villains like Shredder, Bebop, and Rocksteady. While it's true those characters did show up in the series, the comics seemed to make a conscious effort to silo them away with character resolutions that effectively took them off the chessboard toward allowing the Turtles more leeway to find their sea legs, as it were, with other baddies, some in different dimensions and some in different continents, like we saw with Khan. Of all the baddies we just mentioned, Khan stood out in that he seemed organized and mobilized to an extent we hadn't seen since the Shredder and his Foot Army. And it's a shame the series was cut short, because there is zero question in our minds that we would have been treated to some additional Chien Khan focused stories. Much like Alopex defecting from Shredder's ranks in IDW, there is an unresolved element between Chien Khan and Ninjara, who we saw introduced in this storyline as his second in command, a trusted mutant thief and assassin in his employ. The story concluded somewhat abruptly, seeing Ninjara turning against Khan and joining with the Turtles. It was alluded that the reason for this pivotal change of heart was because she felt more akin and at home with the Turtles. Plus, there was a budding romance brewing between her and Raph. But the relationships between her and Khan was far from resolved, resolved, and we can only imagine that if that plotline had been revisited, Khan would have come back with a vengeance and been allowed to show the Turtles that he was the threat we always knew he could be. Within this same story, we were also treated to a handful of other notable characters as well, like Hothead, though here he is known simply as the Warrior Dragon, or Chu Shi, which was his human firefighter alter ego with whom April had a blink and you'd miss it brief romantic interest in. Noite Dar, a powerful demon whom Khan sought to resurrect, as well as Oyuki Mashimi, who was basically meant to act as a sacrificial body to conjure Noite Dar, but proved to be a tough-as-nails addition to the Turtles roster for quite a few issues beyond this tale. Oyuki is yet another awesome character very much in need of some deep dive love, so don't be surprised if you see her showing up in a later deep dive as well. It is worth noting that we did actually get a Chien Khan figure in HeroClix form back in 2016. Granted, it wasn't articulated, but it was a figure nonetheless, and for folks who have been waiting for over 30 years for this figure to appear in any form, that's not nothing. It's that time again for the portion of this series we literally just created called SpeekyGeeky's Let's Imagine It, where we imagine what the character's role would have been inside the Fred Wolf universe. As always, if you'd like to see more of the thing we're about to describe, let us know in the comments. If it resonates with folks, perhaps we can see about expanding these concepts out a little further in a different form within a future series on the channel. With Khan, we think it would be fun if when we first see the character, he's still unmutated and introduced to viewers as an ancestor to Shibano-sama. Khan has come to New York looking to lay his birthright claim to the Foot Clan, the clan his great-grandfather started. So boom! Right off the bat, we now have some additional lore to the characters that wraps him into the Turtles' past in a meaningful way. At first, this puts Khan at odds with the Shredder, until he realizes that Shredder's foot aren't in fact skilled in the ancient arts of his ancestor, but rather disposable robots. Infuriated by this discovery, and seen as an affront to the lineage his family created, he sets out to see the defeat of Shredder, which eventually leads him to become allies with Lotus Blossom and her army of ninja warriors, forming what would be known as the Dogstar Gang. In the course of attempting to sabotage Shredder inside the Technodrome, Lotus leads the reconnaissance but stumbles into a trap that Shredder had left that douses her in a bucket of ooze. We're talking Kevin McAllister Home Alone burglar style here. Meanwhile, Khan and his Dogstar gang, unaware of Lotus's fate, rush into a different area of the Technodrome, where they are met by a similar fate, when the room they burst into turns out to have a false floor and a vat of mutagen below it. So, whoopsies. Khan loses his balance with the floor's removal and accidentally spills the contents of a mysterious ancient urn he has been carrying with the words Noite Dar ornately etched onto it. It falls into the ooze directly before he and his clan are submerged. Khan emerges as the pit bull terrier dog appearance we've come to know and love. And due to the fusing of ooze with what was in the urn, it keeps his Dogstar gang, who are now quite literally a pack of mutant dogs, fiercely loyal to Khan's command in a way that almost seems like they are in a trance. Lotus, however, awakens to find herself a now mutant fox resembling a certain character from the Archie series, second guesses her choices, and seeks the comfort of some old friends, the Turtles, for solace. By having Lotus essentially turn into Ninjara, it could, in one swoop, manage to both organically bring a fan-favorite character into the series, in addition to making a more clear distinction between Lotus from Cryin, who we also have some fun plans for that we'll discuss in an upcoming installment. Okay, so what would we want to see Chien Khan coming along with in toy form? Naturally, he would have multiple heads. In this case, we see it being 3 distinct sculpts. One pre-mutated, one with his samurai mask, and another in his mutant dog form. We also see him coming with a sheathed katana that could be haltered to his waist, like we saw with the Usagi figure. An urn with the words Noite Dar on it, and a pair of Oni Tantu claws. Number 3. Hypnopotamus. Sometimes there comes along a character who is just so colorful, so wacky, so delightfully absurd that it's hard to believe they didn't already exist within an episode of the Fred Wolf universe to begin with. Whatever your feelings are on the Rise of TMNT series itself, one major positive takeaway from that iteration was the enormous wealth of uniquely awesome new characters introduced within it that seemed like they could have been a seamless fit within the Fred Wolf universe had they been created just a handful of decades earlier. And Hypnopotamus, with his larger-than-life stage performer persona infused with a lovingly cartoonish mutant hippo appearance that might make the original series illustrators do a double take that it wasn't based off one of their toy concepts, sits mighty purty atop this very long list. Once a successful, over-the-top human hypnotist and stage magician named Mesmeron, he became the mutant hippo Hypnopotamus when one of Baron Draxum's Ooze-Skeetos, and yep, you better believe we'll eventually be tackling Draxum down the road with this series as well, stung Mesmeron within the proximity of Doug, a non-mutated hippo that was part of his stage act. Though technically Hypnopotamus is a villain, he is very much more introspective and considerate than any rogues we have met before. He often second guesses how he is acting and more often than not is convinced to see the error of his ways. To be fair, his hatred toward the turtles isn't unwarranted, as their actions inadvertently did directly lead to his transformation. But by the end of the series, we see even that animosity had softened. And from unused concept designs from the show's creator, Andy Suriano, we can see that in the far-flung Rise of TMNT future, the intent was to make Hypnopotamus and his accomplice, friend and partner Warren Stone, full-fledged heroes. Working with a more modern-looking yellow jumpsuit-wearing Commander April O'Neil, Casey, Mikey, and Leo as part of their freedom fighters against the Utrom invasion. This team-up sadly was cut from the story, but these designs are top-notch and would have fit perfectly alongside our Smash and Zack figures and our ever-growing Turtle Ally army on our shelf. Again, we realize there are plenty of folks who haven't taken the plunge into the Rise series yet. Not every Turtle series is for everybody, and admittedly, for longtime TMNT fans, this series does have its own fun, unique flavor that may seem a bit divergent from the classic. But, and this is a big turtle but here, the recently released Rise movie that is currently on Netflix is somewhat of a standalone. Feels very much like the original, as well as a handful of other iterations. It might be a good place to dip your toe into the ooze to get a feel for these characters before deciding to go full mutation
And binge the rest.
If NECA approaches Expanded Worlds full steam with their What If line, we think Hypnopotamus, paired with his little buddy companion Warren Stone, naturally would be a fantastic addition to the Fred Wolf-style toy roster. As we noted before, he already looks the part, but he also already has such a toyetic and showman-esque aesthetic that is just begging to introduce folks to what else awaits them on their shelves. We see Hypnopotamus coming with a removable turban that has translucent circles that plug in and expand away from the jewel in the turban's center to replicate using his hypnosis stare, with an extra mesmerizing-eyed head too, of course, some interlinked large metal rings to ensnare foe, and if he was presented as an ultimate-size figure, we might also include a second mutation Swell, Warren Stone, and additional iconic outfits like David Bowie, Indiana Jones, and his Freedom Fighter Dark Future gear to toggle between. If you're anything like us,
This could be a sneaky opportunity
to finally create your own deep-cut hippie hippos team from the Teenage Mutant Hero Turtles story Dimension Escapades as well. And then boom, just like that, we're going from buying one awesome hippo to at least 5 all in one swoop, which means we'll probably also have to reinforce our shelving unit to have any chance to survive in the incurring weight. Number 2. Old Hob. Sure, as the saying goes, you can't teach an old dog new tricks, but as crafty Old Hob illustrates, for mutant cats, well, that's an entirely different story. For many, Old Hob stands out as one of the many breakaway characters from the IDW series. Though Old Hob seems rooted as an amalgamation of equal parts cat's blood claw from TMNT and Other Strangenesses Roadhogs, Caesar, yet another character from TMNT and Other Strangeness, who, just like his IDW counterpart, has paled up with some strikingly familiar mutant weasels. The action figure Scratch and Minx/Verminator X from Archie's TMNT adventures. In the IDW mythos, he is firmly defined as having a connection to the Turtles and a Splinter from the very beginning. It turns out that an abandoned premutation Hob,
though technically that would make him young Hob, we guess,
encountered the Turtles as they made contact with the ooze and tried to run off with premutation Raph, which Splinter didn't take kindly to, and subsequently scratched his eye out.
so, youch!
Seeing as how Raph had mutagen all over him when Hob tried carrying him off, his mutant origin story directly overlaps with their own. Technically, Old Hob was the Turtles' very first enemy, but throughout the series he occasionally finds himself an ally of circumstance. Cunning and ethically questionable, Old Hob illustrates the flip side to the Turtles' sense of family and moral code, though he has started a family of his own in the form of the de facto leader of the Mutanimals, many of which oftentimes help, or at least attempt to keep Old Hob's morals marginally less gray. How do we see Old Hob fitting into the Fred Wolf universe? Well, for starters, it could be a somewhat similar origin story here. True, we never technically see a cat near the mutagen in the different rendition of the Turtles mutating for the very first time within the series,
But who are we to say what was happening directly right outside the screen's line of sight?
there are a variety of ways Old Hob could be pivotal within this setting, and quite a few characters and important groups we could see him interacting with to move the chess pieces, as it were, into places where he might emerge as a villain equally as formidable to Shredder, Krang, or Lord Dreg were he within the series. If it sounds like we may have more to add to this story, that's probably because we most certainly do, but we want to make sure to find the best way to get this story out to folks. So again, and I realize we sound like a broken record here,
If you'd like to learn more about our vision,
for Old Hob explored in further detail, let us know in the comments, and then stay tuned. For the figure itself, we see Hob coming with a removable trench coat, a big honking cartoonishly enormous gun, and 3 smaller, less articulated Fred Wolf-styled weasels. Number 1. Cryin Houn, aka Hound Dog. Remember what we just said a moment ago about not being able to teach an old dog new tricks? Yeah, well, you can throw that right out of the ring while saying an up-close "How do you do" to Cryin Houn's multi-arm pile driver as he gladly shows you just how many new tricks and fellow wrestlers he's picked up over the years. Hailing from the Archie comic series, and arguably one of the most unique-looking characters from that Turtles run,
who just so happens to have a similar buck type to the recently revealed Mutant Shredder from NECA. Cough, cough.
He's that wrestling dynamo that our intergalactic wrestling-clad ninja bros encounter will whisked, or rather swallowed, away to Sling and Stump's wrestling asteroid by a giant trans-dimensional cowhead named Cudley the Cowlick, which, side note, we also still very much need as well. So expect to hear more about that character in a future installment of the series, and basically every and any opportunity we have to bring up our love for that character. Did someone say Comic-Con exclusive Cudley the Cowlick carrying case with wrestling turtles and Cryin Houn housed inside? Oh, we did? Just now? Good. We stand by that outburst. How would Cryin Houn fit into the Fred Wolf universe if we had our druthers? We'll say this, it isn't outside the realm of reason that the Turtles would have seen some additional off-world adventures. There definitely was a precedent for such a thing within the episodes we did see, like Planet of the Turtleoids and Planet of the Turtles. So encountering a Fred Wolf-style Cudley who whisks them off on some otherworldly adventures where they have to don their iconic wrestling outfits and enter a tournament fighter-like competition with the fate of planet Earth at stake doesn't seem like a story too far off the mark for what we knew and loved about that show. Aside from his fun wrestling costume, extra appendages, and posing a clear challenge to the Turtles, he made multiple appearances in the comic series, reintroducing himself a second time as a wholly new costume wrestler named El Mysterio. We'd love to see his additional El Mysterio head, and perhaps some dazed-looking, disembodied wrestling turtle heads for him to spin upon his fingertips like we saw in the comics. SpeekyGeeky's TMNT polls! Since we're already talking about wholly new characters in plastic, we figured we'd take a moment to ask you, the viewer, who you'd like to see in one of our upcoming videos. We've been running polls on our YouTube community page as well as our SpeekyGeeky Instagram and Facebook pages as to which TMNT characters from various iterations we might want to see as toys. Here are some options from our latest polls, which you can weigh in on here in the comments or head on over to any of our socials for the full list of option names to weigh in on over there as well. And stay tuned because these winning options and more may very well appear in an upcoming TMNT Deep Dive or two. There are also some incredibly talented TMNT customizers who are already creating some of these characters who appear in our polls
and deep dives.
And it is a beautiful thing to see. Here are just a few of those absolutely creative folks that you are definitely going to want to keep up with.
So make sure to follow them on their socials as well. The incredible original art featured in this episode was lovingly brought to you by Las Tortugas Ninja creator Manuel Condi Serna. As we mentioned last episode, Condi brought us a wealth of original characters such as Moycat, Sharkius Bronchi, and Terminator within that series. Many of these characters fit seamlessly within the Turtles mythos, and even though the issues were incredibly difficult to obtain in the States, it's worth noting Eastman and Laird oversaw and approved these expanded universe tales. Condi may be rolling out a crowdsource soon for the continuing adventures of these expanded world characters called Maxian Chronicles. If you would like to see more of Condi's incredible work, make sure to follow him on Instagram at the link shown, where he may also have some ability to take commissions if you ask nicely. Just make sure to tell him Mr. Geeky sent you. If you still haven't seen our behind-the-scenes interview with Condi, make sure to check that out and other content you are sure to enjoy on our SpeekyGeeky.com website.
Alright, Shellheads, that's it for this episode, but don't stray too far from the Turtles' lair because episode 9 is right around the corner. We have no doubt you have some characters that top off your list as well, so make sure to make your hopes known and join the discussion in the comments below. And if you haven't already, make sure to sub up, give the video a like, and share it with anyone you know who would appreciate these types of videos. Also, make sure to check out the description for some other links that lead to some expanded similar content we think you'll probably enjoy quite a bit. We realize you could have gone anywhere and you chose to nerd out with us, and we appreciate that. So, as always, I am Mr. Geeky, and until next week, NECA Turtle Speaky, keep it geeky, folks.
It's Christmas Eve and all my friends are here. Wrapping up presents, it happens once a year. I do my best when I'm wrapping my gifts. I take a lot of pride when I put the gift inside of the wrap. Yeah, Come on, say it again, y'all. The rap. Yeah. It takes time and it takes a lot of hearing. Put the ribbon on, feels good when you're sharing. I do my best when I'm rapping my gifts. I take a lot of pride when I put the gift inside of the rap. Aw yeah, say it again. The rap. Come on, here we go. Say it again.
This has been April O'Neil, Channel 6 News, signing off.